"Drive somewhere private," she whispered, sliding into my car. Rain hammered the windshield as I stared at my boss's wife, the woman who was about to destroy everything I'd built. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope. "Marcus, I found proof. David's been stealing millions." My throat went dry. She was talking about my mentor, the man who'd saved my career, and she wanted me to help betray him. I gripped the steering wheel, frozen. One decision, my entire future hanging in the balance. What would you do? The unexpected call the rain drummed against my windshield as I sat in the office parking lot, finishing up paperwork from today's client meeting. My phone buzzed an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello? Is this Marcus?" A woman's voice, refined and slightly breathless. "Yes, this is Marcus Chun. Who's calling?" "It's Victoria. Victoria Hartwell. David's wife." My heart skipped. David Hartwell was my boss, the CEO of Hartwell Enterprises. I'd met Victoria exactly twice, once at the company Christmas party and once at a charity gala. She was elegant, poised, the kind of woman who commanded attention without trying. "Mrs. Hartwell, is everything all right? Is David okay?" "David's fine. He's in Singapore for the merger talks." She paused. "I need your help with something. Something sensitive. Are you still at the office?" I glanced at the clock on my dashboard. 7:30 p.m. "I'm in the parking lot, actually. Just finished some reports." "Perfect. Can you pick me up?" "I'm at the Meridian Hotel downtown. I know this is unusual, but I need someone I can trust. Someone who works closely with David, but someone discreet." Every alarm bell in my head started ringing. This felt wrong on multiple levels. "Mrs. Hartwell, perhaps you should call." "Please, Marcus." I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. 20 minutes? Against my better judgment, I heard myself say, "I'll be there." The drive to the Meridian was a blur of rain and neon lights. I kept asking myself what I was doing. I was 28, 3 years into what had been a promising career at Hartwell Enterprises. David had mentored me personally, fast-tracking my promotion to senior account manager. This felt like a betrayal, just driving to meet his wife, but she'd said she needed help. What if something was genuinely wrong? The Meridian's valet area glowed under golden lights. I pulled up and saw her immediately. Victoria stood under the awning, wearing a long black coat, her dark hair pulled back. She looked around nervously before spotting my car. She slid into the passenger seat, bringing with her the scent of expensive perfume and rain. "Thank you for coming," she said, not meeting my eyes. "What's this about, Mrs. Hartwell?" "Drive somewhere private," she said quietly. "Please. I'll explain everything, but not here. Just somewhere we can talk without being seen." And that's when I froze. My hands gripped the steering wheel. Every instinct screamed that this was a terrible idea. Private? Why did we need to be somewhere private? What could she possibly need to discuss that required secrecy from her husband, my boss, my mentor? "Mrs. Hartwell, Victoria. Please, call me Victoria." She finally looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that looked like fear. "I know how this looks. I know what you're thinking. But I promise you, this isn't what it seems." The rain kept falling. I kept sitting there, frozen. The decision my mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Was she in danger? Was she setting me up? Was this some kind of test of my loyalty to David? I'd heard stories about executives testing their employees in bizarre ways. But this seemed extreme, even for corporate gamesmanship. "I need to know what this is about before I drive anywhere," I said firmly, keeping my hands on the wheel. The car still in park. Victoria looked out the window at the rain, then back at me. "Fair enough. You deserve that much." She took a deep breath. I found something in David's office at home. Documents, financial records that don't make sense. Transfers to accounts I don't recognize. Large amounts of company money moving in ways that look wrong. My stomach dropped. You think David is embezzling? I don't know what to think. That's why I need help. I can't go to the police without being sure. I can't confront him without proof. And I certainly can't ask anyone at the company officially, because if I'm wrong, I'll have destroyed his reputation. But if I'm right, she wrapped her arms around herself. I need someone who knows the company's finances, someone smart enough to look at these documents and tell me if I'm being paranoid or if there's really something there. It made sense. Horrible, career-destroying sense, but sense nonetheless. As senior account manager, I had access to financial systems. I knew the company's accounting practices. I'd even helped prepare reports for board meetings. Why me specifically? I asked, because you're competent. Because David trusts you, which means you're trustworthy. And because? She hesitated. Because you're not part of his inner circle of executives. If there is something wrong, they might be involved. I need someone on the outside. I sat back in my seat. If what she was saying was true, this was massive. David Hartwell was a pillar of the business community. Hartwell Enterprises employed over 3,000 people. If he was cooking the books, the fallout would be catastrophic. But if Victoria was mistaken or worse, if this was some elaborate scheme I didn't understand, I'd be finished. Not just fired, but potentially liable for corporate espionage, conspiracy, or God knows what else. Where are these documents? I asked, in my car, parked 2 blocks from here. I didn't want to bring them into the hotel in case someone recognized me. She looked at me earnestly. Marcus, I know I'm asking a lot. I know this puts you in an impossible position. But I don't know who else to turn to. If David is innocent, we'll confirm it and never speak of this again. But if he's not, the rain seemed to fall harder. Okay, I heard myself say. But we do this smart. We find somewhere secure. You show me what you have, and I give you my honest assessment. That's all I'm promising. She nodded, relief flooding her features. That's all I'm asking. I put the car in drive. The drive we drove in heavy silence through the rain-slicked streets of downtown. I took random turns, half watching for anyone who might be following us. I felt ridiculous, like I was in some spy thriller instead of real life, but Victoria's nervousness was contagious. Where are we going? She asked after 10 minutes of aimless driving. Good question. We needed somewhere private, but not suspicious. A parking garage felt too isolated, too much like a setup. A restaurant or coffee shop defeated the purpose of privacy. My apartment was absolutely out of the question. That crossed every professional boundary imaginable. There's a 24-hour office complex on Riverside, I said. My friend's startup has a space there. He gave me a key card for when I help him with his books. The building's mostly empty at night, but it's secure and legitimate. We can use one of the conference rooms. Victoria nodded. That works. As I drove, I snuck glances at her. She looked exhausted, older than her 42 years. The polished woman from the charity galas was gone, replaced by someone who looked like she hadn't slept in days. How long have you suspected something? I asked. 3 weeks. Maybe longer, if I'm honest with myself. She stared out at the passing lights. Little things didn't add up. David was stressed more than usual, even with the Singapore deal. He'd take calls late at night and leave the room. Started password protecting his home computer, which he never did before. Then last week, I found a burner phone in his gym bag. A burner phone doesn't necessarily mean financial crimes, I said carefully. No, she agreed. It could mean he's having an affair. Part of me almost hopes that's all it is. An affair I could handle. An affair doesn't destroy thousands of lives. We pulled up to Victoria's Cara silver Mercedes, parked on a dark side street. She got out, retrieved a manila envelope from her trunk, and returned quickly. She held it against her chest like it contained explosives. As we continued toward Riverside, I thought about David. He'd been my champion at the company. When I'd made a costly mistake on the Henderson account 2 years ago, he'd defended me to the board, even taken partial responsibility himself. He'd sent a generous gift when my father died. He'd written a personal recommendation letter for my MBA application. Could that man be a criminal? Could I be about to betray him based on the paranoid suspicions of a wife who'd found a secret phone? Marcus, Victoria said softly, I can see you're having second thoughts. I understand. We can turn around. You can drop me back at the hotel and pretend this never happened. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. I'm not turning around. But I need you to understand, if I look at these documents and everything seems legitimate, we are done. I'm not going on some crusade based on hunches. Fair enough. The Riverside complex appeared ahead, its glass facade reflecting the stormy sky. The documents the conference room was sterile and modern glass walls, white board, a long table that could seat 20. I locked the door behind us, my hands slightly trembling as I did. This was really happening. Victoria spread the documents across the table. Bank statements, wire transfer confirmations, spreadsheets, printed emails. Her organizational system was immediately apparent, everything labeled with color-coded sticky notes. Dates highlighted, connections drawn with red pen. You've done your homework, I said. Impressed despite myself. I was an accountant before I married David, she said. I gave it up to raise the kids, but I haven't forgotten how to read a balance sheet. I started with the bank statements. The account belonged to something called HTW Consulting Services, LLC. The account had been opened 8 months ago with a $50,000 deposit. Since then, monthly transfers ranging from $75,000 to $200,000 had flowed in. The money would sit for a day or two, then get transferred out to various other accounts. HTW could stand for Hartwell, Victoria pointed out. And look at the dates of the incoming transfers. They match up with major deals David closed. The Pacheco acquisition, the Melbourne contract, the Richardson buyout. I examined the correlation. She was right. Every major deal corresponded with a substantial deposit into this account within 48 hours. Could be legitimate consulting fees, I said, playing devil's advocate. Maybe David set up a separate consultancy for side work that doesn't conflict with Hartwell Enterprises. Look at the outgoing transfers, Victoria said. Sliding another sheet toward me. The money went to numbered accounts in the Cayman Islands, Singapore, and Switzerland. Classic offshore tax havens. That raised red flags, but wealthy people used offshore accounts for legal reasons all the time. Then I saw the smoking gun, or what looked like an email thread, printed from David's personal account. The recipient's address was encrypted, just a string of random numbers and letters. But the content made my blood run cold. Transfer complete. Same structure as before. 20% to the usual accounts. Make sure the Singapore paperwork matches the timestamps we discussed. It was dated 3 weeks ago, right before David left for the merger negotiations. 20% of what? I muttered, pulling out my phone's calculator. Victoria handed me another document, the official financial summary of the Singapore deal. The merger was valued at $18 million, with Hartwell Enterprises acquiring a controlling stake in a shipping logistics company. 20% of $18 million was $3.6 million. I looked at the HTW consulting account. The most recent deposit, made 5 days ago, $3,582,500. Oh God, I whispered. Victoria's eyes were wet. Tell me I'm wrong. Please tell me there's an innocent explanation. I wanted to. I desperately wanted to find some legitimate reason for all of this. But I'd been in finance long enough to recognize what I was looking at. We need to verify these documents are real, I said carefully. Anyone can fake bank statements. I photographed these from David's safe. My head snapped up. You broke into his safe? It's my house, too. The implications eyes stood up from the conference table, needing to pace. The implications were staggering. If David was skimming money from company deals, it wasn't just embezzlement. It was fraud on a massive scale. Shareholders, investors, employees, everyone who depended on Hartwell Enterprises would be victims. We need to think this through, I said, forcing my racing thoughts into order. Let's assume these documents are genuine. Let's assume David is actually siphoning money from company deals. What's the mechanism? How is he actually doing it? Victoria had clearly thought about this. The Singapore deal, for example. The public valuation is $18 million. But what if the actual price negotiated was, say, $21 or $22 million? David has sole authority to negotiate these deals. The board trusts him completely. He could inflate the purchase price, pay the extra to this consulting account, and pocket the difference. It was brilliant in its simplicity. David had built such a reputation for integrity that no one would question his numbers. The board would rubber stamp whatever he presented. The only people who'd know the real price would be the sellers, and if they were getting paid what they asked for, why would they care if David was telling his own company something different? The Singapore Shipping Company, I said. We'd need to verify what they actually received versus what Hartwell's books show. How do we do that without alerting David? Good question. I pulled out my laptop, connecting to the office VPN. My hands hovered over the keyboard. What I was about to do was either heroic whistleblowing or career suicide, possibly both. I accessed the Singapore deal files. As senior account manager, I had legitimate reasons to review major acquisitions. But if someone in IT checked the logs and saw me accessing these files at 11 p.m. on a Saturday from an unknown IP address with the boss's wife sitting next to me, that would raise questions I couldn't answer. You understand what happens if we're right about this? I said, not looking away from the screen. David goes to prison. The company's stock crashes. Thousands of people might lose their jobs in the fallout. Your family's reputation is destroyed. Your kids. My kids have a father who's a criminal, Victoria said sharply. Better they learn that now than when the FBI kicks down our door. She had a point. I found the Singapore acquisition documents. The file was enormous, hundreds of pages of contracts, due diligence reports, financial projections. I scrolled to the purchase agreement, the actual contract between Hartwell Enterprises and Pacific Logistics Holdings. Purchase price, $18 million. I felt a wave of relief. Victoria, the contract says $18 million. That matches the public. Look at the addendum, she interrupted, pointing at the screen. Page 47. I navigated to page 47. There was an addendum dated 2 days after the main contract. Consulting fee adjustment, $3,500,000 to be paid to HTW. Consulting services for transaction advisory services, $3.5 million. Almost exactly the amount that had been deposited into that offshore account. Jesus, I breathed. Victoria was crying now, silently. Tell me what to do, Marcus. The moral dilemma. I closed my laptop and sat down heavily. The weight of what we'd discovered pressed down on me like a physical force. This wasn't speculation anymore. This was real, documented fraud. The right thing is obvious, I said slowly. We go to the authorities. We hand over everything you've found. We let them investigate. And David goes to prison, Victoria said. My husband, the father of my children. Emma is 17, Marcus. College applications are due in 2 months. Jacob just turned 14. You're asking me to destroy their father. I'm not asking you anything. David did this to himself. To them. Did he? She wiped her eyes angrily. You don't know what it's like, building a company from nothing. The pressure, the stress. Maybe he made a mistake. Maybe he panicked during a difficult negotiation and saw an opportunity. A mistake is a one-time thing. I interrupted. You showed me multiple transactions. This has been going on for months, maybe longer. This is systematic. Victoria stood, walking to the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the city glistening and clean-looking, a live reflection. What if we confront him first? She asked. Give him a chance to make it right? He could return the money, resign quietly, avoid prosecution, and the next CEO does the same thing because they learned there are no consequences? I shook my head. Victoria, this isn't just about David. It's about everyone he's stealing from. The employees who own company stock in their retirement accounts. The investors who trusted him. The clients who pay fees that subsidize his theft. I know, she whispered. I know you're right. I keep thinking about the man I married. The man who built a company that employs thousands of people. The man who donates millions to charity every year. How does that man become this? I thought about my own relationship with David, the mentorship, the trust, the opportunities he'd given me. Had it all been real, or was I just another person he'd used to build his empire of fraud? Maybe people are complicated, I said. Maybe he's both things generous and criminal, mentor and thief. But that doesn't change what we have to do. Victoria turned back to face me. If we go to the authorities, they'll want to know how we got these documents. I broke into my husband's safe. I brought you into this without authorization. We could both face legal consequences. I hadn't thought of that. She was right. We'd obtained this evidence through questionable means. A good lawyer could potentially get it thrown out. We need to talk to an attorney, I said. Someone who specializes in whistleblower cases. They can advise us on how to do this properly. Can we trust an attorney not to tip off David? Can we trust ourselves to handle this alone? Victoria looked at the scattered documents on the table. I suppose we're past the point of trust, aren't we? We sat in silence, the magnitude of the decision before us settling into our bones. A complication, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and felt my stomach drop. David Hartwell. The call came from Singapore. It was Sunday morning there. I showed the screen to Victoria. Her face went white. Don't answer it, she hissed. I have to. If I don't, he'll wonder why. I took a breath and answered, putting the phone on speaker. David, hi. Isn't it early there? Marcus. Good to hear your voice. David sounded energized, enthusiastic. Just finished a breakfast meeting with the Pacific Logistics team. Everything's moving forward beautifully. Listen, I need you to pull together the Henderson quarterly reports. The Singapore people are impressed with our client retention numbers. And I want to show them what sustainable growth looks like. I watched Victoria's face as she listened to her husband's voice, friendly, trusting, completely unaware that his career was about to implode. Sure, I can have that ready by Monday morning, I said, keeping my voice steady. Perfect. Hey, actually, while I have you heard from Victoria? I've been trying to reach her all day. Her phone goes straight to voicemail. Victoria's eyes went wide. She shook her head frantically. No, I haven't spoken to her, I said, technically true. Maybe her phone died? Probably. She's terrible about charging it. He laughed, that warm paternal laugh I'd heard 100 times. Anyway, I should let you enjoy your Saturday night. Thanks for being available. This is why you're going places, Marcus. Most people your age would have ignored the boss's call on a weekend. Guilt twisted in my gut. Just doing my job. It's more than that. You care about the company. About doing things right. That's rare. A pause. When I get back from Singapore, we need to talk about your future here. I'm thinking it's time to move you into a VP role. You've earned it. A promotion. He was offering me a promotion while I sat in a conference room with evidence of his crimes spread across the table. That's great, David. Thank you. Thank you, Marcus. Have a good night. He hung up. Victoria and I stared at each other. He's promoting you, she said quietly. While he's stealing millions, he's promoting you. He doesn't know we know, I said, but even as I spoke, paranoia crept in. Was that call really just about the Henderson reports? Or was David testing me, seeing if I'd mentioned Victoria? And the promotion, was it genuine, or was it a way to buy my loyalty, to make me complicit in his schemes? We can't wait, Victoria said firmly. We have to move now, before he gets back from Singapore. Once he's home, he'll notice the documents are gone from his safe. He'll know I looked. We don't even have a lawyer yet. Then we go straight to the FBI. Victoria. Tonight, Marcus. We have to do it tonight. I looked at the time. 11:45 p.m. The FBI doesn't exactly have walk-in hours. They have emergency lines for reporting federal crimes. The witness, before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Janice Pack, the company's CFO. My blood ran cold as I read it. Marcus, need to speak with you urgently. Are you available for a call? Janice never texted me on weekends. She barely acknowledged my existence during business hours. We operated in different stratospheres of the corporate hierarchy. What is it? Victoria asked, seeing my face. I showed her the text. Don't respond, she said immediately. She might suspect something, or she might be reaching out about something completely unrelated, and ignoring her will make me look suspicious. I texted back, available now if it's urgent. My phone rang within seconds. Marcus. Thank you for picking up. Janice's voice was tense. I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Have you accessed any of the Singapore acquisition files tonight? My mouth went dry. The IT logs. Someone had been monitoring them after all. Yes, I was reviewing the deal structure to prepare some reports David requested. At midnight on a Saturday? From an IP address in the Riverside office complex? Think, Marcus, think. I'm helping a friend with his startup. He has office space there. David called me an hour ago asking for reports, and I didn't want to drive all the way back to the main office. Silence. Then, I'm going to ask you something, and your answer will determine whether you have a career on Monday. Are you alone right now? I looked at Victoria. She was shaking her head violently. Yes, I lied. Why? Because I've been conducting a quiet internal audit for the past 6 weeks, and I found irregularities in several major acquisitions, including Singapore. Tonight, when I saw someone accessing those files from an unusual location, I thought. She paused. I thought maybe David had figured out I was investigating him. The world tilted. You know, I whispered. I know something is very wrong. I don't know the full extent yet. And I need to know, why are you looking at those files? Are you involved in whatever David's doing, or are you trying to figure it out like I am? Victoria was gesturing wildly, mouthing words I couldn't decipher. This was it. The decision point. I could lie, protect myself, maybe even protect David if there was still some way to spin this. Or I could trust Janice, trust that she was genuinely trying to expose fraud rather than setting some elaborate trap. I'm not alone, I said finally. Victoria Hartwell is with me. She found documents. Evidence of offshore accounts, inflated acquisition prices, systematic fraud. We were trying to figure out what to do. Victoria buried her face in her hands. Janice let out a long breath. Is Victoria willing to talk to me? I looked at Victoria. She lifted her head, eyes red, and nodded. She's willing. Give me the address. I'm coming there now. Don't leave. Don't call anyone. Don't access any more files. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The call ended. Did we just make a terrible mistake? Victoria asked. I don't know, I admitted. But we're about to find out. The Alliance Janice pack arrived in 18 minutes, wearing jeans and a Georgetown sweatshirt, the most casual I'd ever seen her. At 53, she was a legend in the financial world, known for her forensic accounting skills and uncompromising integrity. If she was involved in this investigation, things were even bigger than I'd imagined. She entered the conference room, assessed the documents spread across the table, then assessed Victoria and me with the same clinical precision. Tell me everything, she said, sitting down. From the beginning. Victoria walked her through it, the burner phone, the suspicious behavior, breaking into the safe, reaching out to me. I explained what I'd found in the Singapore files. Janice listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on her phone. When we finished, she said, the irregularities I found go back 18 months. Maybe longer. That's as far as I've gotten in the audit. I estimate David has stolen somewhere between $15 and $20 million from the company. Victoria made a sound like she'd been punched. How did you start investigating? I asked. A discrepancy in the Melbourne contract caught my attention. The reserve allocation didn't match the purchase price in a way that made sense. I dug deeper and found a pattern. But I couldn't go to the board without proof David has allies there, people who tip him off. I've been building a case quietly, collecting evidence that would stand up in court. And now? Victoria asked. Now we have a choice. We can go to the FBI tonight, hand over what we have, and hope they can build a case before David realizes he's being investigated. Or we can wait, let me finish the audit, and deliver an ironclad case that he can't wiggle out of. If we wait, he might discover we know, I pointed out. Victoria took those documents from his safe. When he gets back, he's not coming back, Janice interrupted. Not if we move fast. The Singapore deal closes on Tuesday. If we can get a court order freezing his accounts by then, we can catch him in the act of transferring the money. That's the difference between white-collar prosecution that might result in probation and a slam-dunk case that puts him away for decades. Victoria stood abruptly. You're talking about my husband, the father of my children. You're planning how to put him in prison for decades, and you sound like you're discussing a business strategy. That's exactly what this is, Janice said, not unkindly. A business strategy to stop an ongoing crime. I understand this is personal for you, Victoria, but it's personal for me too. I've worked for this company for 12 years. I recruited people here, promised them they were joining something ethical and sustainable. David betrayed all of us. So what do we do? I asked. Janice pulled out her phone. I call the FBI contact I've been consulting with. We arrange a meeting first thing tomorrow morning. We hand over everything. And we pray that justice works the way it's supposed to. She dialed before anyone could object. The reckoning the FBI took our statements at 6 a.m. Sunday morning in a downtown field office that smelled like burned coffee and institutional anxiety. Special Agent Rebecca Torres treated us with professional courtesy, but made it clear we were witnesses, not heroes. We'd broken laws obtaining the evidence. We'd waited hours before reporting. We'd compromised the investigation with amateur detective work. But the evidence was damning enough that they moved forward anyway, by Tuesday afternoon. Federal agents had frozen David's accounts and arrested him at Singapore's airport as he tried to board a flight to the Cayman Islands. The news broke on Wednesday. By Thursday, Hartwell Enterprises stock had crashed 40%. I sat in my apartment, watching the news coverage, my phone blowing up with calls and texts I couldn't bring myself to answer. The board had placed me on administrative leave pending their internal investigation. My lawyer said I'd probably avoid prosecution, but my career at Hartwell was over. Victoria had checked into a hotel under a fake name, avoiding the media circus camped outside her house. She'd texted me once, "Thank you for doing the right thing. I'm sorry for dragging you into this." I didn't know how to respond, so I hadn't. The worst part was the emails from colleagues. Some called me a hero. Others called me a traitor. A few suggested I'd fabricated everything to take David's job. The truth was more complicated than any of them knew. My doorbell rang. I considered ignoring it, but something made me check the peephole. Janice Pack stood in the hallway. I opened the door. "The board made their decision," she said without preamble. "They're offering you a settlement. Generous severance, neutral references, an NDA that prevents you from discussing what happened. What if I don't sign? Then you get nothing, and they make your life difficult. Corporate law isn't about justice, Marcus. It's about damage control." I let her in. She sat on my couch, looking as exhausted as I felt. "For what it's worth," she said, "you did the right thing. It cost you, and that's not fair, but you did it anyway. That matters, does it? David's going to prison. Thousands of people lost their retirement savings, and I'm unemployed at 28 with a scandal attached to my name. You're unemployed at 28 with your integrity intact. That's rarer than you think." She stood to leave, then paused. "I'm starting a consulting firm. Forensic accounting, corporate investigations. I could use someone smart, someone ethical, someone who understands what it costs to do the right thing. Think about it." After she left, I sat in the dark, thinking about everything that had happened since that rainy Saturday night when Victoria had said, "Drive somewhere private," and my life had changed forever. I picked up my phone and called her. "Victoria? It's Marcus. We should talk. Really talk. About what comes next. For both of us." Outside my window, the city lights flickered like distant stars, promising nothing, revealing everything.